Good evening and welcome. This evening we would like to look at the Ruach Nivua, that is the spirit of prophecy. So in the Hebrew it is Ruach, that's the spirit, and Nivua, prophecy. So we want to take a look at that this evening in our Bible study. And as such, I would invite you to turn in your Bibles to the book of Hazon. Hazon, that's the book of Revelation, and the 12th portion of it. And we will look at verse 17. The context here is that Johanan is on the island of Patmos, and he's receiving a vision, and he's told to write these things down. Write what you see, write the things that are, and the things hereafter. Three things. And in chapter 12, he is dealing with, here in verse 17, the remnant, the residuum, that's the remnant. We know that to be the last piece of a batch of something, whether it's a piece of cloth, carpet, or a group of people. We are dealing with the residuum. And so John here, Johanan, in verse 17 says, "And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to fight with the remnant of her seed, those guarding the commandments of Yahweh and possessing the weakness of Yeshua HaMashiach." Satan here is angry with, is wrathful with those who keep the commandments and they have the faith of Yeshua. And we are told in Revelation 19 and verse 10, here Johanan said, "And I fell at his feet to worship him. But he said to me, See, do it not. I am your fellow servant and your brothers who possess the weakness of Yeshua. Worship Yahweh, for the weakness of Yeshua is the spirit of Nebuah. Don't worship me," said the angel. Don't worship me. Reserve that for Yahweh, because the spirit of prophecy. So when we talk of the Ruach Nivua, the spirit of prophecy, we're really talking about an end-time message, a people who have that last day understanding of the message. Like Noah. In his day, he knew what was going to happen, and therefore he preached that end-time message to the people, and as a consequence, he became, along with the other 7 people, a remnant of the group. They were the last of that group that was left. Last in the world. We see Abraham also. Abraham grew up in Babylon. His father was a priest in the courts of Nimrod. And we are told in the book of Joshua, chapter 24 and verse 2, that Abraham's father was one of those back in Babylon who worshiped other gods, other deities, other mighty ones. And so he was called out from that experience to build a family through which Isaac produced Jacob and Jacob Israel, and they became a remnant from the other group of people. So the remnant, the residual, is always the last of that batch. But as we read here in chapter 12 and verse 17, it says, Satan is angry with this group of people because they keep the commandments and they have the testimony of Yeshua. They have that which, and they practice that which Yeshua testifies about. Yeshua came in Matthew 5 and verse 17, and he made it clear. He says, think not that I have come to change that which the prophets wrote of me. I have come to magnify them, says Isaiah. I have come to show you how to live those prophecies. That's what I've come to do. And so a number of people have taken this text here, and it's as if they have patented it, saying they are the remnant. But it is very clear what the requirements are. It says, these are people who keep the commandments and have the faith of Yeshua. Now, when we talk about commandments, we're talking about commandments that includes the feast days. So turn with me to the book of Vayikra, that's Leviticus, and chapter 23, and we'll read a few verses there. And the word says, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the appointed times of Yahweh, which you are to proclaim as Kodesh gatherings, my appointed times are these. 6 days work is done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of rest, a Kodesh gathering. You do no work, it is the Shabbat to Yahweh in all your dwellings. These are the appointed times of Yahweh, Kodesh gathering, which you are to proclaim at their appointed times. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between the evenings and the Pesach, that's Passover, to Yahweh, and on the 15th day of the month is the festival of Matzot, to Yahweh. 7 days you eat unleavened bread. And it gives you a list of all the times that Yah's people should gather themselves together to worship him. So I make the point here is that the remnant people will practice these. Some people have come here and they've taken out the seventh-day Sabbath and say we're Sabbath keepers, and they leave the rest. The remnant practice all of them. Noah did not keep part of the commandments, neither did Abraham. Neither did Israel. They kept all the commandments, including the feast days, which the churches say they will not keep because they are done away with. And it's clear, historically proven, biblically proven, that they're not done away with, and that it is Constantine in 321 AD who not only changed the Sabbath. Sometimes we think that it's only the Sabbath that he changed, but he changed also the feast days. He said he did not want anything to do with the Jews, and therefore he discontinued them in the empire of Rome, during which he made Christianity a state religion. And so primarily most of the institutional churches that we have today, they are product of the Protestant Reformation. And many of them, although they left Rome geographically and came to the Americas and elsewhere, ideologically and theologically, they did not leave Rome at all. They are still product of Roman Catholicism. And so we are dealing with the residual group here, those who came out of the Protestant Reformation. Satan is only angry with those who keep the commandments, including the feast days, and have the faith of Yeshua. But we also want to look at Genesis, that's Bereshit. And if we come to chapter 3, it says, and the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said to the woman, is it true that Elohim had said, do not eat of every tree of the garden? Is it true? And the woman, that's Eve, said to the serpent, we are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said to the woman, you shall certainly not die. Now, as we read that text and we understand the application and the implication of it, it is apt to speak about what happened today in Israel. It is being noised abroad and elsewhere that they have reached a peace deal with Hamas. And the world is enjoyment. They're happy. And perhaps rightly so, that the war is to cease and the killing of the people on both sides will cease. But as you read the text here, the woman's response to Satan is that we should eat of the fruits of all the trees, but this one is in the middle of the garden. I want you to understand the symbolism here, because the symbolism here in the garden is in reference to Yah's people, Israel. And I'm not talking geographic Israel. I'm talking the chosen remnant people at the end of time. This is the message, the end time message, the understanding of it. So in Ezekiel chapter 5, and verse 5, we read, "Thus saith Adon Yahweh, this is Jerusalem, which I've placed in the midst of the Gentiles, with the lands all around her." So in Ezekiel chapter 5 and verse 5, Yah is saying, I have placed Jerusalem in the midst of the nations around. Just like I have put that tree in the Garden of Eden in the midst of it, and I've asked you not to touch it, I'm asking the people of the world not to touch Jerusalem. And again, I want to emphasize the point that I'm talking about. Yah's end time people who believe in Yeshua, they are the one who make up the remnant of Israel. I want you to understand that. But I want to make the link of Ezekiel chapter 5 and verse 5 with Genesis 3. The garden, the tree in the middle of the garden in Eden, is symbolic of this Israel at the end time. Come with me also to Ezekiel chapter 12. Ezekiel chapter 12, and we will take a look at verse 23. "Therefore say to them, thus said the Adon Yahweh, I shall make this proverb to cease, so that they no longer use it as a proverb in Israel. But say to them, the days have drawn near, as well as the matter of every vision. For no longer is there to be any false vision or flattering divination within the house of Israel. For I am Yahweh, I speak, and the word which I speak is done. It is no longer deferred. For in your days, O rebellious house, when I speak the word, I shall do it, declares the Adon Yahweh." So the land that is here being bartered with in Israel, in Leviticus we are told that the land must not be sold beyond reclaim, because the people there are sojourners with Yah. It's not their land, it's his. Israel belongs to Yah. That's what Yahweh says. The land belonged to him. And so let's read it, chapter 25 of Leviticus, and verse 23, "And the land is not to be sold beyond reclaim, for the land is mine, for you are the sojourners and settlers with me." So we have the United Nations, and we have other nations, including America here, working towards a two-state solution. And I wonder how they are going to reconcile this, because, yeah, as we just read in Ezekiel, he said, when I speak my word, I will declare it. In Isaiah 55 and verse 11 also, he said, my word will not return to me void. So it's almost as if any attempt the nations make for a two-state solution, it will be incongruous with that which Yah has spoken and what he desires for his land, because he says his throne will be in Jerusalem. That's where he will reign. And so the remnant people at the end time, they will understand this. They will be able to explain this. They will teach this, and they will live as if this is a reality for them. Even as the children of Issachar, they knew the signs of the time, and they understood this. So the word says in chapter 3 that they hate the fruit from the tree of the middle of the garden. Even as the people here in our generation, they are messing with this Jerusalem that is in the middle of the garden of the world. We've got to understand that. They are being tempted, and we are told that Jerusalem is going to be a burdensome stone to the people of the world. And we can see that happening. We can see the unfolding of events, how they play into the politics of that. We're watching that. And I'm wondering if the people are not reading the word of Yah. But in verse 15 of chapter 3 of Bereshit, we're told that Yah would put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. Let's dilate upon that a little. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. Now, it's worth noting that the woman offspring is here referenced by a singular noun. You can see it in verse 15. The singular noun there is seed, and that seed is immediately antecedent to the singular pronoun he and his. What's my point? So the seed of the woman is individualized. There is a particular seed that is coming. And what's also intriguing, throughout the scriptures, extensively so, whenever a seed is mentioned, it is always the seed of the man. The seed of Abraham, the seed of Noah, the seed of Isaac, the seed of Jacob. But in this context, verse 15 is talking about the seed of the woman. So you know instinctively that the seed to which this refers is the seed of a human woman, but conceived by the Ruach. That's why the seed is not of man. So in that regard, he could not have come through human, in the sense that a human being his father, because when Adam sinned, sin became a genetic transmission, and all men were infected with sin because we're all tied up in Adam's loins. So the remnant, that's what we're dealing with tonight. So we're talking about a distillation process. That's what we're dealing with. We're distilling something, or at least Yah is. And so distillation is a process designed to separate and to purify compounds or even mixtures of azeotrope. So when you distill something, you are separating and making it pure. And so that's what Revelation chapter 12 and verse 17 is talking about. It's talking about the church that went into the wilderness and had been there for 1260 years. And that church was the multitude. And if we take that phrase or that thought, the multitude, we can bring that back all the way to Israel in Egypt, a mixed multitude. And when that group of people eventually came out into the promised land led by Joshua, only two, when the second census was taken, Caleb and Joshua made it through. They were the remnant of that group. Got to understand that. And the reason they were the remnant, they never lost sight of what Yah wanted them to do, whereas the others, they died in unbelief. If we transport that to Yeshua's time, when Yeshua came and the disciples asked him, but why are you speaking to the people in parables? He's saying, I'm speaking to you in parable for you to know. You need to understand the message of the hour, the end time message. But it's not for the multitude. You are the remnant of them. And so it's almost ludicrous when a people claim to be the remnant, but they're not doing or living the remnant message. If you were to say to people, but do you keep the feast day? They would say, no, we don't keep it. And you ask why? They say it's done away with. Who made it so? History tells you Constantine. And obviously, whoever you believe in, that's the man who rules you. That's your master. And so you cannot then claim on that basis that you're a remnant. You can't do that. And so the remnant people are a people who understand the message and they live the message. They do that. So when the church, the woman, came out of that persecution, and the mixed multitude of them fled from Europe and came to America, most of the people who came from that persecution and came to America, even now, they still keep the first day of the week as a Sabbath. You cannot do that and say you're a remnant, because you're not doing what the remnant did. They keep the commandments, not part of it. They don't have a 10% discount on the commandments. The remnant don't do that. And so the word is clear that Satan is only angry with those who do right. Right doing, that's righteousness. That's what we have to understand. And so if we go to Revelation chapter 14, which we will read a few verses there, and this is really a taste of what we're going to be doing on Sabbath. Revelation chapter 14. The word says that it is the hour of Yah's judgment. And I looked and saw a lamb standing on Mount Zion, That's the land right now as we speak. They're trying to apportion a part to that group and another portion to another group. And Yah has made it clear that's where my throne is going to be. So if Yah's throne is going to be in Jerusalem is going to be a burdensome stone. We are seeing that happening in front of our own eyes. And because the majority of the people, they do not have that spirit of the prophecy, they're not understanding what is happening. Let's read it again. And I looked and saw a Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 having the Father's name written upon their foreheads. They had Yahweh written on their foreheads. You didn't hear me. I said they had Yahweh written on their forehead. That's the Father's name. When Moses asked him, he said, "What is your name?" He said, "My name is Yud-A-Vav-A." And we pronounce that to be Yahweh or Yavah. That's how we pronounce that. And they had it written on their forehead. And most people today, they just call him God. Some say Lord, as if he's a British baron. And that's what they do. And I heard a voice out of the Shemayim, that's the heaven, like a voice of many waters, and like the voice of loud thunder, and I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps, and they sang a renewed song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders, and no one, who? No one was able to learn that song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. That song was born out of their experience. Like the slaves in America in years gone past, some of those songs that they sing, and we call them Negro spiritual, despite the fact that other people sing them too. But they did not have the experiences that they had. And so these songs had meanings to them. Swing low, sweet chariot. Sweet chariot. Yeshua is coming to carry me home one day. And when I say home, I don't mean the heaven that most people talk about. I'm talking about the earth that we're going to be reigning with him on. That's the kind of reigning I'm talking about. He said, I'm coming to the earth. And John said, I saw the new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven onto the earth to reign. That's what the word said. And so we're seeing that. And so if you come with me to verse 6 of the same chapter of Hazon, chapter 14, he says, and I saw another messenger flying in the mid-heaven, holding the everlasting good news. The everlasting good news. We're going to be looking at that in some more detail on Sabbath. The everlasting good news. He said that's what we've got to preach. That's the message of the hour. But if you don't know what the message is, you can't preach it. The angel comes, and the angel has this message, and he's shouting it from the mid-Shemayim, from the mid-heaven, holding the everlasting good news to announce to those dwelling on the earth, even to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. No one is exempt. None. Saying with a loud voice, revere Elohim, fear him, and give esteem to him, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made the Shemayim and the earth and sea and fountain of water. Is declaring that you ought to worship him. And if you're going to worship him, you got to worship him the way that he says he ought to be worshiped, and the times in which he said you ought to worship. We just read earlier a few verses in chapter 23 of Leviticus, and he's telling you the times when we're supposed to meet, the seventh-day Sabbath and all the other feast days. Remember, the Sabbath is a feast day also. It's a festival. It's the first of the seven, and we ought to keep all of them. But some people have only taken the Sabbath out, which is only part of it. It's a precept of the 10. So when you say that you're a remnant and you only keep the Sabbath, what are you saying? Your churches are replete with divorce and remarriage. How can you do it? It says, thou shalt not commit adultery. You can't be a remnant doing that. Flee fornication. Thou shalt not steal. Oh, so many people steal tithe and they steal time, and you say you're a remnant? So we've got to understand what the remnant is. The remnant is a people that are distilled and purified. That's what we're dealing with. And they're sanctified by the word. John 17:17. Sanctify them by thy truth. Thy word is truth. So if you don't believe the word, and I know you don't believe the word if you're not practicing it, because believe is a verb. And I hear people say, well, you know, those things are done away with. All we need to do is just to love. Yeah, I said, if you love me, then you keep my commandments. You cannot love and break the commandments at the same time. He's saying, when you love me, you demonstrate by way of your obedience in keeping them. And so tonight we're saying that the remnant, they're a quality people. John said, I saw 144,000 of them. And the song that they sing, nobody else could sing it. Listen to what he says in verse 4. They are those who were not defiled by women, meaning they were not defiled by other churches. Why do I say that? Because in Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 2, Jeremiah wants you to know, I have likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman. So a woman is symbolic of the church. He said, this remnant group of people that you see here in Revelation chapter 14, they were not defiled. They did not believe in ecumenicalism. They were singular in faith to Yeshua. They kept his commandments, and they had the testimony of Yeshua. They were not defiled by women, for they are maidens, they are virgins, pure. They are those following, they what? They follow the Lamb wheresoever he goes. They were redeemed from among men, being first fruit to Yahweh and to the Lamb. If you understand the first fruit, well, you perhaps some of you don't, because you'll only understand it if you understand the old idea of Passover, the barley harvest. When the barley is ripe and is to be harvested, you get the first crop. You cut the first crop. That's from it you take a sheaf and you wave that. That's why Yeshua is a wave sheaf. And so if that first crop is fit, then the rest of the harvest can be harvested. So these are the first fruit. And so the first fruit, they have to be circumspect in character. And that's why when Yeshua rose from the dead, it says he was the first from among the dead. And 50 days after that, in chapter 2 of the book of Acts, we have harvest. We have what we call Pentecost. So Pentecost is the wheat harvest, whereas barley harvest is Passover. And in the autumn, in September, October, we have the fruit harvest. And so all these feast days are placed here for the remnant to study, because Yeshua said, I will establish it this way as he told Moses, so that I can teach you the mechanics of salvation, how a person gets saved. You can't omit these things. You can't ignore them and then make the false claim that you're a remnant. It says the remnant are those who keep the commandments and they have the faith of Yeshua. So if you are not practicing, you're telling us that you're not faithful. You're not faithful at all. And so how then are you going to make it in? How? So the angel comes and the angel says, fear Yah and keep his commandment, because that's the whole duty of man. Solomon wants you to know that. And so another angel comes, another messenger followed, saying, Babylon is fallen. Now, to understand that, you have to go back to chapter 5 of Daniel to understand, because the writer here in Revelation is assuming that you have read Daniel. That night when Belshazzar made his banquet and invited all the people. Churches are like banquets sometimes. They come to enjoy themselves. And they were drinking liquor that night. And then a bloodless end. If only you could see the end writing. The reason is people are not seeing it. They don't have the end time message, and they're not living it. Even if you preach it, you got to live it. Your spoken theology must be that which you live also. You live faith. It's a verb. So Babylon is falling. We're talking now Mr. Babylon. But if you understand physical Babylon, how it fell, how Cyrus crept up through the riverbed of the Euphrates River and took Babylon that night. And Belshazzar paid dearly with his life. And we're watching the Euphrates River drying up even now. So we know spiritual Babylon is falling. And another angel came. That's the third angel. And the word says that by this time it's too late, because you ignore the two messages. He said with a loud voice, if anyone worship the beast and his image and receive his mark upon his forehead or upon his hand, he also shall drink the wine of the wrath of Yahweh, which is poured out undiluted onto the cup of his wrath, and he shall be tortured with fire and sulfur before the Kodesh messenger and before the Lamb. That's the three angels' messages. Worship Yah. The hour of his judgment has come. That's the first angel's message. The second angel's message is Babylon is falling. Now, if you hear that Babylon is falling, what should you do? You should run for your life. As Lot did, the angels took him out of Sodom. Run. But now people are still staying. And watch where I'm taking this. We're not talking about a physical Babylon. We're talking about a spiritual Babylon. And if you don't have the insight, the testimony of Yeshua and the spirit of prophecy, you're not even going to understand what I'm saying. Spiritual Babylon is fallen. Get out. But you stay in. Lot had to be dragged out and told, run for your life. And his wife wouldn't play ball with him. And she became sodium chloride, as the Bible said. And so the third angel messenger is saying, if you worship the beast, you've had it. That's it. And so Yah is so destined to save his people. The third angel went out and the messages were sent, the three angels, and he sent a fourth angel. Come with me to Revelation 18. Because he's trying to secure a remnant. And the word says, and after this I saw another messenger coming down from the Shemayim, having great authority, and the earth was lightened from his esteem. And he cried with a mighty voice, saying, Babel the Great is falling, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, and a haunt for every unclean and hated bird. Now, you could take this and you could travel back in time to Ezekiel chapter 8, and this is what Ezekiel was seeing in the temple in Jerusalem. So you kind of get the picture here that Babylon is not a place like a city or a town. It's dealing with a temple where people worship. Mr. Babylon. You have political Babylon and you have spiritual Babylon. That's what's happening here. So the angel comes and he's saying, get out. Verse 4. And I heard a voice from the Shemayim saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive her plagues. Come out. So the message is of gone out. One, you didn't worship the way that Yah said because you didn't keep the commandments and you did not keep the feast days. You allow other people to tell you that what Constantine says is more important than what Yah said. And I know you will say, no, 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 that's not true. But by their fruits you know them. By their fruits you know them. When Yah speaks, you got to understand that he's sovereign. And his word will not come back to him void. There is no appellate court to which you may appeal when Yah speaks. His word is law. Give glory to him. Give kavod to him. Because this is the hour of his judgment. And 1 Peter 4:17 tells us that judgment begins in the house of Yah. So even as you have refused to keep the feast days on the Sabbath, you are being judged on that account right now. So how did you get to the idea that you're a remnant? You are the residual. How? How? And so you're told to get out. So come with me to verse 22. And the word says, and the sound of harpists and musicians and flutists and trumpeters shall not be heard in you anymore at all, and no craftsman of any trade shall be found in you anymore at all, and the sound of the millstone shall not be heard in you anymore at all, and the light of the lamp shall not shine in you anymore at all, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall not be heard in you anymore at all, for your merchants are the great ones in the earth, for by your drug sorcery all the nations were led astray. Now, the word is letting you know the great people of the earth, when this is taking place, when Babylon is fallen, are going to be men of stature in terms of religion, in terms of wealth and resources. And we're seeing that happening even as we look towards the inauguration of the next president, and the wealthiest people are coming together in support of that. And so we just owe it to them to pray for this nation and to pray for them that in all they're getting, they will get wisdom. We must do that because the word says the hour of Yah's judgment has come. And he's saying, if you do not distill yourself from them, you see how when you boil a kettle, how it's distilled. The vapor is removed. Remove yourself from them. Otherwise, you're going to get the plagues. And we don't know what form the plagues will come, but we know this much. He said in the last days, he's going to use the resources of nature to chastise the people like fire. He said that. And so we must take Yah's word seriously, because Yah is serious in what he says. And many of us are not taking it seriously, but we are just going by what men say. That's what we're doing. And so the word says that the seed of the woman, there's going to be conflict. And so we know that the seed of the woman is Yeshua. So if the seed of the woman is Yeshua, the woman has to be Israel. So you cannot say this woman is Israel, and then you are saying you're a Gentile. It doesn't make sense. If you are a seed of the woman Israel, then you have to be doing what Israel does in order to maintain that lineage. You got to live like Judeans. It's simple. You can't say your father is Israel, but your name is Babylon. Doesn't make sense. The seed of the woman is Yeshua. The woman is Israel. And so if you are the residue of that seed, the remnant of that seed, if you be in Yeshua, then are you Abraham's seed? Then are you Abraham's seed? Understand that. Abraham was born in Iraq, but he left Babylon. Come out of Ur, my people. And he crossed over the Euphrates to the promised land, and he was called Abraham the Hebrew. So all of you, whatever your denomination, whatever your name, you have to come over to Israel. Simple. You cannot stay over in the Gentile land as you proclaim yourself to be and reap the harvest in Israel. You can't do that. You have to be a Judean. Abraham, leave your country, leave your family, leave your own, and come. There's a place that I will give unto you, the promised land. Come, Abraham. Abraham left. The angel now comes to us, and the same message he gave to Abraham, he's giving to us. Come out of Ur, my people. And we sit and we listen to stories being told. The word says, at this hour, the everlasting gospel, the existential gospel, must be understood within the context of the everlasting gospel. We can understand that. The message of the hour. Noah had the message of his time. Repent. A flood is coming. Repent. Fire is coming. But it's as if we're happy only to know that we belong to a remnant church. No. Yeah, I've always had a remnant people. And the remnant is made up of people from different places. You cannot say you're a remnant church. He only has one flock. And so we seem to pattern this thing. And people say, well, we're in the remnant church. Where in the Bible do you see that? Come on. So we just wanted you to take note of this and relook into the Word and realize that to be a remnant, you must keep the commandments and have the faith of Yeshua. In Yeshua's name I pray.